If you have spent any time around the Second Amendment, whether it's for or against, you've probably heard the term common sense gun safety. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. All right. So I decided to go on another little rabbit hole journey. Now, this one's not going to be like the one a few episodes ago where, we talked about pollution and all this crazy stuff, right? I decided I was really curious to jump on some of the gun control websites and figure out a little bit of that information so you don't have to. But you know what? You're completely welcome to. I think it's important that we spend time understanding the adverse argument to what we believe, whether it be religion or politics or in this case, firearms. So I went on this adventure. I don't know any other, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. I went on a little journey through the Brady Campaign's website as well as Moms Demand Action. Now, you're welcome. Like I said, please go to their websites, look through their stuff. I'll link them in the job description. Where did that come from? I will link them in the show notes. Maybe I'm applying for a new position. Who knows? Whatever that means. And then you can look through their website as well. But let's start with the Brady campaign. First thing I did is common sense gun laws. I just Googled it. And the Brady campaign was the first one that showed up. And so I decided, hey, well, let's just learn a little bit about what the Brady campaign or the Brady whatever. Their website is just Brady. But if you look at you're Brady United. And right off the ticker, you look at their website and it talks about common sense gun laws. First of all, that is a knee-jerk phrase to try and get more people involved across the aisle about gun control measures, right? They'll use the term common sense, thinking, well, everybody needs to, everybody agrees with common sense, right? I'm going to make an adjustment here. Sorry. Everybody agrees that we just need to have common sense gun laws. It's just common sense. Let's just do safety stuff. And they went from gun control to gun law to gun safety. And they're going to use that term gun safety across the board. It's synonymous for gun control now. Now, they'll tell you, no, it's not. It's common sense. You just need to save lives. You don't care about kids. That's what it boils down to, is you don't care about kids. And we're going to get to some other statistics that I jumped into a little bit later. But let's look at the number one thing that they're concerned about as far as the Brady campaign is enhanced background checks. Now, they're going to tell you that background checks, or they're not going to tell you, they're going to make it sound as if background checks are not taking place. When was the last time you went and bought a firearm? Well, the last time I did, even though I have a concealed weapons permit, which is also a misconception here, but we're not going to get into that right now, I still had to fill out a 4473. That information is still retained. In fact, the ATF says now to FFL holders, licensed dealers, you have to keep those records indefinitely. So there is a start of a background check. Now, my concealed weapons permit says that my background check, my background check has already taken place. Now, when you go get a concealed weapons permit, it takes, time, because they do look into your history, which is fine, I guess, whatever you want to say. In fact, that was part of the deal with, honestly, the NRA. When Brady and the NRA decided, hey, we need to have background checks was it the 80s, 90s? That was part of the deal. The NRA said, yeah, okay, let's do background checks. And so that bill was passed. Every licensed firearm dealer has to do some sort of a background check, and has to do, by federal law, they do paperwork that shows the disposition of that firearm to the individual. It is federal paperwork. The form is called a 4473. You can look it up on the ATF's website. And through that form 4473, it talks about the categories of what would restrict you from buying a firearm. Lying on a federal document is against the law, right? It's punishable under federal law. So if you're willing to lie on a background check form or a 4473, which is a federal document, then you've already broken the law, right? If you're willing to lie. And something else maybe we've talked about before, but maybe you don't remember. Did you know that firearms retailers, federal firearms license holders, can deny a purchase at any time for no reason? When I was on the retail counter selling guns, I did it twice. Something didn't feel right. The dude was being a pain in the ass, and I said, you know what? We're done with this transaction. I'm not selling you a gun today. And and they're supposed to do it, right? If the FFL holder or the employees acting under that FFL feel that there might be an issue with the transaction, they can cancel it at any time with no big deal. Okay, well, let's get back to the background check issue that Brady's talking about. The reason why they want enhanced background checks is, first of all, it goes through this big long list about, hey, you know, what did they call it? Oh, yeah, there it is. The Charleston loophole. So the Charleston shooter used a loophole to get a gun, they say. And it's a loophole that's existed from the very conception of the background check system. And NICS stands for National Instant Check System. National Instant Check System. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure we live in a day and an age where we can search anything we want instantaneously on the computer. I believe the feds should be able to do that as well, and honestly, they probably do. But for some reason, when it comes to firearms purchases, you know, there's a huge majority that take minutes, sometimes seconds to come back. But sometimes, maybe if the name is very common, or maybe they forgot to put junior on their form, you know, if they have a suffix in their name, sometimes that check might take a little bit longer. Now, under federal law, as it went through the check system law, right, through Congress's approval, they told the feds, you have 3 days to complete a background check. 3 days. Business days, mind you. Not if you go buy a gun on a Friday and you get 2 days off. No, that's not how it works. 3 business days. If you cannot complete a background check in those 3 business days, the gun can be transferred without penalty to the FFL holder. Okay? Now, I've dealt with that a bunch. Anybody that's worked retail at a gun store knows, yeah, that happens frequently. And after 3 days, they're able to pick up a firearm. But what Brady is suggesting, and also Mom's Demand Action, is we need to enhance the background check system and tell Congress that they have to do a 10-day mandatory wait. Now, will that be a big game changer for gun violence? No, probably not. Most gun crimes happen with guns that are stolen or black market, right? They end up in the market through stolen means. I heard the other day that there was a group in Texas, and now this is just hearsay, right? But and this might have been years ago. There was a group in Texas. They were handyman and construction workers, or whatever. When they'd go to a home, they would snoop around a little bit, and if there was a gun safe or if the homeowner owned firearms, they'd make note of it, and then later break into the home, steal the guns, and sell them on the black market. Now, I'm sure something like that happens frequently across the United States. If you're not locking up your guns, don't be an idiot. Buy a safe, lock them up. That's responsible. You don't have to. I'm not telling you have to do it, but it's a responsible thing to do. All right, back to the background check, enhanced background check. Not only is this Charleston loophole a big travesty throughout the United States, we need to make sure that all background checks are happening no matter what, even in private transactions. Now, in the United States, if I wanted to sell a gun to my son or my neighbor, I don't have to go through a background check. Now, I'm not selling guns to make a profit. The ATF would pay attention. I guarantee if I was buying gun after gun after gun after gun, and then for some reason the ATF's like, man, what's going on here? We better go check this dude out. They come and visit, and I no longer have those firearms in my possession. There would be an issue, right? Then I would be acting as a dealer without a dealer license, and I'd be breaking federal law. Yet, here we go with this enhanced background check system. They say no matter what the transaction is, whether it be to a family member or a neighbor or a trusted friend, you have to go to a dealer and have a background check system. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, what's wrong with that, Steve? That doesn't seem like that big of a deal. You're right. Maybe it doesn't seem that big of a deal. But what happens to the paperwork? And why do they want to know when every sale takes place? What this creates is a pseudo gun registry. Now, remember earlier I said FFLs are required to keep paperwork indefinitely. So suddenly grandpa's shotgun, when it gets given from me to my son, which I don't have my grandpa's shotgun, so don't even worry about thinking about that. Excuse me. If I want to give my grandpa's gun to my son, now we'd have to go with the enhanced background system. I would have to go to a dealer, fill out the paperwork. My son would have to fill out the paperwork as well. We'd have to go through a whole transaction. The dealer would then be subject to doing an acquisition and a disposition in their A&D book, is what they call it, acquisition and disposition. And then they're swamped with more paperwork that the dealer has to do. The dealer's going to end up having to charge for that. And then the government's going to know every firearm transaction in the United States. Why would they need to know every gun transaction in the United States? Maybe because they want to know about every firearm that exists in the United States. Now, that is called a gun registry, folks. It's a gun registry. You can put lipstick on a pig, but guess what? It's still a pig. Okay? And the other thing they say is these gun show loopholes. We've talked about this on the show before. Gun show loopholes. I can go to any gun show in the United States at any given time. I can buy a gun across state lines and not have to do a background check. False. That's inaccurate. And it's been proven time and time again. Okay? Any time a dealer, and if you look up that form 4473 on the ATF's website, you're going to see that there's this portion of the form that says, is this at a gun show? Well, if there's a gun show loophole, why is it in the paperwork? It's not much of a loophole if you're required to answer honestly on a federal form. Then how is it a loophole? Oh yeah, it doesn't exist. But then they'll say, well, what about private transactions? Nothing stopping somebody from going into the parking lot and make a transaction. Well, if it is a dealer making a private transaction outside, then they're breaking federal law under their agreement to hold an FFL. So that takes that one out of the question. No dealer is going to risk jail time and a business and the employees' lives by doing a stupid transaction like that. So that obviously doesn't exist. Again, if it is a private one-to-one sale, it's legal in the United States. Legal. Now, I have sold guns in the past. We've probably talked about that before as well. But what I do is I will not sell a gun to somebody who does not possess a current concealed weapons permit. Guess what? They've gone through a background check. I don't need to worry about paperwork. It's done. Honestly, it's none of the damn business to the ATF about my personal property. Zero. And maybe you should feel the same way. Maybe you don't. Whatever. All right. So there's one of the common sense gun laws that we need to enact in the United States. Let's see. Let's jump back to some of these other ones. We already talked about that. The background check system. Extreme risk protection orders. And we have talked about red flag laws. Okay, that is what this is talking about, is red flag laws. What is a red flag law? So let's just say I am not to disparage any veterans that might be not veterinarians, veterans that might be listening to the show. But at times, maybe I'm having a bad episode. I have a lot of veteran friends. I have some that have dealt with some serious stuff in the military, serious stuff. And I've seen what that can do to some of these boys that come home and deal with a lot of emotions and a lot of the things that they've seen. I get it. I do get it. To an extent. I haven't experienced myself, obviously. But what red flag laws do, or they're designed to do, I should say, at least on this face, is maybe this veteran's girlfriend says, hey, Bill's having an episode. I don't know what he might do. Come get his guns. Now, on the surface, that sounds completely benign and makes sense, right? Because we don't want anybody killing themselves, using a firearm to kill themselves, or for any means, committing suicide by any means. We don't want that, right? So let's take the firearms out of the equation. Then Bill won't do something dumb with his gun. It seems common sense, right? But there's a problem with it. And it's a serious problem, because then it jumps on the 14th Amendment. Or is it the 4th Amendment? Man, now I'm screwing up completely. Unlawful search and seizures, right? No due process has ever taken place. The government just comes and takes his guns, and Bill is left without compensation for his property or any real explanation of why his guns are gone. Can you think of a way that might get abused? Maybe there's a deranged ex-wife that just really wants to get her ex-husband good. And I know he loves to hunt. And I know he loves to shoot. I know what I'm going to do. I think he's a danger to himself. No due process. Can you see where that might get abused a little bit? Now, there are organizations already out there that exist to say, I should have pulled them up. I think it's Hold My Guns is one of the organizations where you can volunteer, and they're looking for volunteers across the United States, where you can volunteer some space in your safe where that individual can store his guns or her guns for a period of time. Now, I'm not quite sure how that works out with the feds as far as holding somebody else's firearms. I don't know how the legal side comes through, because I was thinking about that actually yesterday. But there's things that already exist to do that are acting within the bounds of the United States Constitution. And though it's a feel-good law that maybe have come out with good intent, there are already examples in the United States where red flag laws were used. That's a whole different group. Don't say that. No, yeah, anyway. Red flag laws were used, even in the state of Idaho, where an individual's firearms were taken without due process, and those individuals were unable to get their firearms back. They were not compensated for what was confiscated. It's an abuse of power under the Constitution. Abuse of power. Almost like that law may really be a way to get guns out of the hands of the United States citizenry. And out of the hands of people that they feel like are the most trained, mind you. Something else to think about. All right. Let's see. Here's another fun one. Where was it? Was it the Retailer Code of Conduct? That one might have been in the Moms Demand Action website. And of course, we've talked about the assault weapons ban of 2023. This one, let's touch on this one again, because it is absolutely ridiculous. I am probably going to weed this from their website. I'm going to read this from their website so you can get verbatim what they're talking about. Because it is rather comical in some ways. Now, these, mind you, Brady and Moms Demand Action, these are the experts in common sense gun safety laws. They're the experts. Shall we listen to some of their expert nonsense? Let's visit. And some of this we can go through a little bit later because it is frustrating, but this is under the assault weapons ban of 2023. Assault weapons led to far more deadlier mass casualty events than shootings with other firearms. In fact, in shootings where assault weapons or large capacity magazines are used, 155% more people are shot and 47% more people are killed. These firearms are designed to kill as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. Interesting. They are weapons of war and do not belong on our streets or in our communities. In 1994, Congress took steps to address the issue by enacting the federal assault weapons ban as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. Our namesakes, Jim and Sarah Brady, were instrumental in passing this life-saving law. Caveat: it didn't reduce gun violence. Let's carry on. Working hand in hand with legislators every step of the way. However, the ban expired in 2004 and was not renewed. Congress's failure to renew the bill had dire consequences. During the decade of the federal assault weapons ban was in effect, 89 people died in 12 massacres. In the decades after the ban, over 300 people were shot and killed in 34 mass shootings, representing 183% increase in massacres and 239% increase in fatalities. Now, there's a little bit of gamesmanship here with the numbers, because they've also changed the criteria of mass shooting in here. In those 2 decades, they've changed some of the definitions, and then some creative reporting takes place as well. But I digress. Just a 2-month span, assault weapons were used to kill 38 people in Buffalo, Uvalde, and Highland Park. Now, we could go through the Uvalde shooting and tell you how frustrated I am, and millions of other Americans with that one for that matter. And Highland Park, sorry. Again, I digress. It's well past time that we renew the assault weapons ban and keep our communities safe. Now, let's go through some of their definitions. Semi-automatic weapons are firearms with tactical designs developed for military use that automatically fire and reload a new bullet every time the trigger is pulled. Every semi-automatic firearm in the world does that. Okay? Now, they make it sound like it's full auto by saying they automatically fire and reload with every trigger pull. So there's a little bit of play on words there. These characteristics make these weapons exceptionally more lethal than traditional rifles. What are they talking, like black powder? Traditional? Because they accept detachable magazines, super scary, including large capacity magazines, super, super scary, and additional features that increase accuracy and concealability. Now, I don't know about you, but my 16-inch AR-15 is not easy to conceal, especially with a magazine in it. Neither are any of my hunting rifles, for that matter. Okay? So, there's a little bit of a lie right there. Nobody is concealing an AR-15. During the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012, the shooter used an assault rifle to fire 154 bullets, murdering 20 children. Now, let me tell you this right now. That dude is a mass murderer. He's a piece of excrement, and they need to chair that turd, okay? It doesn't matter who you kill, especially kids. You're a dirtbag, and you're a waste of human existence, okay? Now, that being said, murdering 20 children and 6 adults in just 4 minutes. Now, there were some security protocols that were abandoned at Sandy Hook, but again, I digress. Since the bill sunsetted in 2004, sales of these weapons have increased dramatically, which was a result in countless preventable deaths. Again, there's no way to extrapolate that data. There's no way to quantify that data. It's just what it is, okay? What they're not saying is how many countless lives were saved in that amount of time as well. Now remember that all rifles combined, all rifles are less than 0.02% of any mass shooting in the United States. Or gun deaths. 0.02%. All rifles. So this is a nearly statistically negligible problem in the United States. Let's see. Bill expired. Only 100,000 let's try that again. In 2004, my gosh, Steve, spit it out. In 2004, the year the bill expired, only 100,000 assault rifles were manufactured in the country because you wouldn't let them be manufactured. It doesn't matter. In 2013, less than 10 years later, nearly 2 million were manufactured. Guess what, gang? We're way past that. As of 2020, there were 20 million AR-style firearms in the United States. That number's low. Today, they are the preferred style of weapons for any would-be mass shooter, which is incorrect because we know that handguns are used by far the majority of time of any murder as far as firearms are concerned. Now, again, we talked about, I think last week, how the definition of mass shooter has changed. Like, what is a mass shooting event? It's completely changed. That's why we're seeing such an increase in reported numbers of mass shootings, because they've changed the definition again. All right, here's where the fun begins. Okay, gang? What are large capacity ammunition feeding devices? Why didn't they just call it a magazine? Actually, I want to go back for just a second to what an assault weapon is. I hate the term weapon. Okay? I despise it when I have to say it in any of my... In fact, I try not to say it when I'm teaching concealed weapons classes because it's not a weapon. For some people, it's a defensive tool. For some people, it's a tool for hunting. It's a firearm. And if a bad guy chooses to use it as a weapon, then it's a weapon. But what they're doing by calling all of them weapons, they're implicating that you and me and millions of United States citizens are bad guys walking on the streets with weapons of war. So if you can, stop using the term weapon when it comes to your self-defense sidearm or your hunting rifle. They're not weapons. They're firearms. A knife can be a weapon. A hammer can be a weapon. A vehicle can be a weapon. An airliner can be a weapon. You see where I'm getting at it? All right. Back to large capacity ammunition feeding devices. Large capacity ammunition feeding devices, also known as large capacity magazines, are magazines or drums that are capable of holding more than 10 or 15 rounds. Y'all got a Glock 17? How many rounds are in that magazine? Just asking. These devices allow shooters to rapidly fire bullets without stopping to reload, giving victims less time to escape or incapacitate the shooter. When the shooter uses this type of device, the death roll rises by 62%, and the number of wounded people increases 14-fold. I am curious where they get this information. I would like to see their data. Unsurprisingly, these devices are commonly used to carry out mass shootings. In 2019, it took a gunman in Dayton, Ohio, equipped with a large capacity magazine, just 32 seconds to fire 41 rounds, killing 9 people. However, some states have been able to save lives by banning these devices between 1976 and 2018. State laws banning these types of magazines were associated with 38% fewer fatalities and 77% fewer non-fatal injuries. I have a question. For these folks that write this stuff. How's that gang violence stuff going? Because you've changed the definition of mass shooting. Now includes all these gang shootings. I'm sure they're only using 10-round magazines. Here's the fun fact. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many bullets they have in their magazine. If they're determined to take a life, they'll take a life. That's an arbitrary argument, and it's not going to do anything that they're talking about. Look at the deadliest cities in the United States. In fact, we're going to get into some gang violence stuff a little bit later, if I remember posting it up here. You might be interested to know that gang violence is a huge portion of gun violence in the United States. And none of those boys, mostly boys, obey any gun law whatsoever. So what's it going to stop? It's not. It's just going to impede law-abiding citizens exercising a right guaranteed in the Constitution. Okie dokie. Anyway, we're not going to read any more about this stuff. It's probably getting boring for you guys. But they go back and they talk about all these interesting features that you can add to these assault weapons that make them so dangerous, like bump stocks. Bump stocks are already illegal, folks. You can thank Donald Trump for that. And, okay, we'll just say this one. Excluding Las Vegas, I'm not convinced that that was a bump stock used. Excluding Las Vegas, how many crimes do you see being used with bump stocks? Have you guys ever tried to use a bump stock? They're stupid. I'm not saying you shouldn't own one, but they're stupid. And they are incredibly difficult to control. And so are full autos, unless you know how to run one. They're pretty hard to maintain on a pattern. A tight target. I digress yet again. Anyway, that was just a fun little journey through the Brady campaign. There's a bunch of legislation, and what's funny is they talk a lot about these as loopholes. There are 20,000 gun laws on city, state, and federal level in the United States. 20,000. Oddly enough, every crime is a crime, even if they don't use a gun in it. What do you mean by that, Steve? Let's say I murder somebody. If I murder somebody with a knife or with a gun, I've still murdered somebody. And last time I checked, that's against the law. If I rob somebody in their house, whether I use a bat or a gun, it's still a robbery and it's against the law. See what I'm getting at? The gun is a tool to the bad guy, just like it is to the civilian. A gun doesn't make it any scarier. It shouldn't enhance the crime. The crime is already committed. Anyway. Steve, you got off the crazy pills. Let's jump to Mom's Demand Action. Then we're going to go with some other stuff I went down the rabbit hole and looked around on. So, Mom's Demand Action, by the way, they say they're bipartisan. Yeah, when you get squishes like, I don't know, Mitt Romney and some of those other loser Republicans, I guess you can say you're bipartisan. But we have members of the military in there too. I don't care who they got. My rights are just as important as everybody else's. Your rights are just as important as my rights. And you know what? Freedom is more important than anybody feeling safe. I don't apologize for that point of view. Let's get to work here. Let's see. Where was I? I found some laws on there. Maybe I didn't go through there. Maybe I just got so sick of looking at their website that I had to go. No, I was reading something on their website about children's or adolescent fatality. Now that took me on a whole nother journey here. Let's they said that firearms are the leading cause of death for children. Now, children for them in their brackets was 0 to 18. Now, it's funny because I've heard of other things causing, high rates of mortality among children. Homicide. Not homicide, but here, let's just look at the data. Okay, shall we? All right. Now, this is United Health Foundation. Okay, this is a website I pulled up. Now, I just asked, what is the leading cause of death of children? That's all I asked in my little Googleizer search. Now, yeah, there were some Trace articles and Mom Demands Actions articles and stuff that said guns are the leading cause of death in children. Are they, though? Are they really? And what are you classifying as children? And is it all children, 0 to 18? And why do you throw some 19-year-olds into that mix as children? Okay, but let's just look here. All right, accidents, which are unintentional injuries, are the leading cause of death of children from 1 to 4, okay? 5 to 9 and 10 to 14. Let's see. Now, where was I going with this one? I think it is all the way up to 14. Now, ages 15 to 19. These are the ones we need to really be looking at. Firearms death is the leading cause of teenagers in the United States. Now, why would that be? How would that be the leading cause of death for our teenagers in the United States? Is it because school shootings are on the rise? And no, that's not it. Any shooting in a school is unfortunate. And if you tell me I don't understand, well, obviously you didn't hear the show that I had last year about a shooting at my daughter's school. So check yourself before you wreck yourself on that one. Made me think, what could be happening to teenagers? Why all this violence among that age group? So I decided to go on an adventure. Made me wonder, well, what are the most dangerous cities in the United States? Okay? There's a lot of gang violence. See where I'm going with this? Gang violence. So, what's the average age of a gang member? Wow. Would you look at that? 15. 15 to 19-year-olds are the average gang member ages in the United States. The highest bracket that's involved in gun violence. Now, I know correlation isn't necessarily causation, but it just so happens some of the most dangerous cities in the United States are some of the cities with the highest gang violence. Interesting. Maybe that data that talks about teenagers being slaughtered by gun violence has more to do with inner city gang violence than school shootings. Now, mind you, it is against the law in any state that I'm aware of for you to possess a handgun at 15. I could be wrong. I didn't look through that data. But you shouldn't have a gun at that age. I agree with that. Maybe under adult supervision? Absolutely, that's fine. I take my kids to the range. So what I'm getting at maybe is maybe the data's skewed a little bit. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I understand that. But why don't you go on the journey too? You don't have to believe anything I say. I want you to go on that journey. I want you to expose yourself. I shouldn't say on the internet because, I guess that makes some people good money. But I do want to expose yourself to the data. Go down the little rabbit holes and look at what's causing these deaths. Why teens are choosing gun violence. Now, that's not a fair statement because I know in my community, we do have some gang violence. You get in some of the outlining areas in Idaho. Well, I shouldn't say outlining, but, through Boise, there's some issues. Honestly, in Idaho Falls, there's some issues. And it's growing. What's causing the gangs to grow? I don't know. That's a different show. But kids are joining gangs at a younger rate. I did look at that data. Now, in 2011, I think the average age was like 16 to 19 when they joined gangs. Now they're as young as 6 years old. 6, joining gangs. Now, if you've paid attention to what's going on south of the border, some of those cartels are recruiting young kids. Young kids. Now, I don't know what's causing these kids to be desensitized. It could be movies. It could be video games. Could be. I could see how that might be. Could it be lack of a dad? Possibly. Possibly. Any of this stuff, any of the rise in crime rates, not including, excluding gun violence, whatever, any of the violent rates in the United States, it's all gone up over the last few years. Now, when you start increasing financial stress, when you start telling kids that the Earth's going to end from global warming by whatever it is, 2030 now, it used to be 2022 or 2020. Well, actually, it started in 2012. Do you guys remember that stupid movie? Maybe we should start showing compassion and love to the kids in our lives. Maybe you should be a mentor. Maybe you shouldn't let your phone or your computer or your TV or the gaming system be the babysitter in your home. Maybe you should get involved in the school board. Maybe you should ask your kids over dinner at the table how school was that day. Maybe. Anywho, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Now, I get super annoyed by the common sense gun law crowd because it's not common sense. They are willing to strip you and me and millions of other Americans. They're willing to take the right of self-defense away from us. Now, you can go be a student of history and start to see what other crazy countries have done after they take the firearms away from the citizens. Now, you got to remember, King George, right? The whole reason why we have a Second Amendment is George said, hey, you know what? You peasants don't need guns. In fact, those colonies, they're getting pretty rowdy. Why don't you go regulate what they have? And so we don't need any kind of insurrection or anything like that from those simple peasants across the pond. Did you hear what I just said? He didn't want those people, those subjects, to have the ability to stand up against tyranny. That is what the Second Amendment is about. Not target shooting. Not because you have a small male member and you need to have a gun in your life. Nope, that has nothing to do with it. I'm fine in that department, thank you. But I do like to exercise my right to keep and bear arms. Because it is a God-given right. It is not a government-given right. It is a fundamental right. Unlike health care and student loan payoffs, those aren't a fundamental right. In fact, the founders felt that every human being on earth had the opportunity or the blessing, or dare I say it, the obligation for self-preservation. It has been part of human nature forever. Self-preservation, right? You can't tell me that when the caveman went out and saw a saber-toothed tiger outside the cave, that he wouldn't try to defend himself. I bet you he would have used any means necessary, whether it be a rock or a spear or the wheel he just carved. You see it throughout the animal kingdom. There are animals with defensive mechanisms that evolution, if you want to go that way, has given to them. Whether it be a poisonous frog or a terrible tasting bug, or the porcupine, which is a great example. Maybe a skunk. They have the right to defend themselves. So why don't we? Interesting thought, huh? Anyway, gang, I think I'll go ahead and stop this show here. If you liked what you heard on this show, whether it be on YouTube you're watching or any of the podcasting platforms, give us a rate, share us with your friends. If you want to get a hold of me or Nick, you can message the podcast on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I promise you, I'm always on those platforms. Way too much. If you want to email us, you can email us at rangeminded@gmail.com. I look at those every day. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm just some bigoted liar that hates freedom or that hates your own safety, let me know. I got tough skin. Let's have a conversation about it. We love to hear from our fans. And we love to hear from people that aren't our fans, for that matter. You can find me on my social medias. It's the Steve Zimmerman on Instagram, or Range Minded on Instagram as well. You can find me on my Facebook page. You can find me on Twitter under Impractical Tactical. Then you got Nick with Hoftac Holsters, or the Holster Guy. You can find us anywhere. We'd love to hear from you. Again, if you like this content, make sure you share it, rate it, give us a good old thumbs up, whatever you want to do. Anyways, gang, be safe. Take somebody shooting and work on that ability to be a good steward of the Second Amendment. It's a God-given right, and we need to share it with others. Anyways, be safe, guys. Later.